Welcome to the Blue Book podcast, produced by Seniors Serving Seniors, the place for seniors from around the Capital Regional District to learn more about the community and its members. My name is Vicki Pilot, and today we will be discussing COVID-19 and its effect on the senior population. We are joined by three fabulous guests from their very own homes: Adam Newton, Dr. Penny McCourt, and Dr. Denise Cloutier. Adam Newton is a registered social worker with the Geriatric Specialty Services team based out of the Peninsula Health Unit. He works with seniors on a daily basis to provide support for mental health, substance use disorders, and neurocognitive disorders. Dr. Penny McCourt is a social worker and the current chairperson of Action for Reform of Residential Care in BC. Through working with older adults in long-term care homes, acute care, and community settings, and her work as a social worker, Penny has become very knowledgeable of the issues around senior care. Her current advocacy work looks to bring the government's attention to the long-standing and structural issues in long-term care that must be addressed. Our third guest on today's episode is Dr. Denise Cloutier. Denise is a professor in the Geography Department at the University of Victoria and a research affiliate with the Institute on Aging and Lifelong Health. Her research mainly focuses on healthy aging, care, and health services delivery, but she is currently working on a project to understand the impacts of COVID-19 on social isolation among seniors. Now let's go meet our guests. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to our first podcast. Welcome, welcome. Nice to see you. Okay, let's jump right into it. Penny, you're working on long-term care and initiatives. Can you share with us some ways that seniors or their family members can deal with the social isolation and mental health issues that you've noticed?
Yeah, I've been working on long-term care for the past year or so, and as you know, people have been locked out. Families have been largely locked out for a good part of this year. Only recently have some family members been allowed in as essential visitors, and more recently as social visitors in some places. Anecdotally, what people have been saying is that when they do get finally in, and this would be after 3 or 4 months of no visits, family members are often very flat, very disengaged, and seem to have slipped cognitively and seem depressed. What's surprising is it didn't take a lot of visits where people seem to become animated again. There's literature now as well that talks about the cognitive impact and the mood effect of social isolation on people in long-term care over this long period of time. And it's not positive. I'd just like to also mention that the mental health of the people who were essential caregivers prior to being locked out and unable to gain access to the facilities are also suffering from mental health issues, anxiety, depression, grief, incredible guilt as well, and very, very big feelings of powerlessness in the face of being refused essential visiting status quite often, or when they do get it, only being able to see the person for brief periods, once a week, behind a wall, 6 feet apart, whatever. So I think the whole COVID issue has had a huge impact and will continue to have a huge impact on people in long-term care and then on their family members. The project we've been working on is actually about improving long-term care, recognizing that the issues that we have been hearing about in so many provinces, including BC, the COVID outbreaks, the neglect, the abuse, the lack of staffing, all those kinds of things were only revealed by COVID. There's systemic and structural issues that have been there for many years and that have been neglected for a very long time and only come to the public's notice quite recently. Mm-hmm. And I think especially through Quebec and Ontario's experience, but more even in our first big outbreak here in BC, got a lot of public concern going. We're attempting to address that through a report with recommendations to the BC government. We have been heard, and we have asked for a task force, a multi-stakeholder task force, to be struck in order to implement the recommendations that we've made. Facilities were working very short-staffed, and many residents didn't have family before, and won't have family after visiting them. Those people were totally dependent on the staff, which, as we know, wasn't, their places were generally not fully staffed. Certainly when the outbreaks were occurring, these people were isolated in their rooms and they had no visitors. The only people they could see were the staff who were run off their feet. So I think, again, the impact of COVID is huge.
So, and on that, can I ask you, it's interesting that you mentioned about the caregivers' mental health as well. That is something I don't think a lot of people think about, but the caregivers also experience that. So, Adam, have you, after listening to Penny, have you been receiving calls or clients that have the same concern about their family members as well? And have you been assisting these kind of clients?
Definitely. I really support and agree with what Penny has shared. And some of my clients don't typically live in long-term care. I support people who are still living in their own homes, but I have a number of clients who have a spouse or a parent living in long-term care. And I think that not being able to see their loved one more than once a week with a scheduled visit has caused quite a bit of anxiety for them. And the other thing I've noticed is that some people who otherwise would endorse their loved one going into a long-term care facility have been hesitant to do so, and have put it off because A, they were afraid that their loved one would contract COVID in a care setting, and B, they were worried about not being able to visit their loved one frequently. And so some people who were already experiencing significant caregiver burden or burnout have held on as caregivers to people who have some very challenging behaviors to deal with in the home setting.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So most of your clients are living on their own right now, and but they come to you with some mental health concerns. Is it right now, I guess, for the past year, is it based around the COVID situation or just general seniors that are experiencing a lot of mental health? What would you say?
Oh, it's definitely a combination, but almost every person I talk to, every client, every family member of my clients have told me that COVID has really contributed to their struggles either with their mental health or what I've really noticed is people who have struggled with substance use disorders have really had a difficult time maintaining abstinence, and many have relapsed because of social isolation, inability to visit family members, inability to meet people, inability to take part in exercise or any sort of community activities.
Right, absolutely. So, what kind of resources and tools are you able to offer? I'm sure there's things like cognitive narrative therapy and things that people can do in their home. Do you ever introduce things like Reiki or meditation, or how does that work when you're providing them with tips and tools?
Well, definitely. I follow the clients where their interest lies, but certainly there's a lot of interest these days in meditation. And so I do spend time with people who are interested in teaching meditation techniques and then following up with my clients on, their learning curve with that. And I don't practice narrative therapy, but I do some cognitive behavioral therapy, and short-term supportive caregiver counseling as well. In terms of resources, the nonprofit community has really risen to the occasion to the best of their ability. And for example, here on the Saanich Peninsula, where I'm situated, there have been several organizations that have delivered meals to isolated seniors, initially free of charge, now based on a sliding scale. But that's been helpful for both the social contact and the nutritional support. There have also been programs through the Mount Newton Center and the Shoal Center to provide volunteer support, wellness checks on isolated people. And some people have really enjoyed having those regular phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's similar programs in different parts of the CRD. I talked to a colleague who works in the Esquimalt West Shore area, and the RCMP have a program where they phone isolated seniors there called Keep in Touch. And there's also been some meals delivered to food insecure seniors through the Souk Food Bank. So there's examples of this throughout Greater Victoria. The Esquimalt Neighborhood House has volunteers doing wellness checks with isolated seniors. I think part of the problem, I mean, the phone calls are great, but it doesn't replace face-to-face human contact.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, our organization does the same things. We're in a food delivery program with Silver Threads to our Return to Health clients, and it's definitely needed for sure. So now I just want to switch gears a bit. Denise, I know you are currently in the process of doing some research related to seniors and COVID-19. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
That's a really important question, Vicki. We have the good fortune of being able to work with community members such as CanAge, a national organization, the Capital Regional District, Seniors Serving Seniors, and the Souk Community Health Network as our partners and advisors, helping us to generate research data analyses to understand patterns of social isolation among older adults and predictors of those patterns. So we'll be interested in looking at markers such as age, gender, immigrant status, income, and geographic residence, and be able to think about how they shape disparities and promote inequalities and amplify social isolation among older adults. And these inequalities that arise are also responsible for reducing access to services, programs, and resources for older adults, in the sense that as we age, it becomes more and more difficult for us at times to retain our social connections and social engagements. So what we hope we will be able to do, guided by our community partners, with them helping us to address and develop certain questions that we want to ask of the large Canada longitudinal study on aging database, we'll be able to generate key questions and go in and undertake the data analyses and provide community service providers with a range of profiles on social isolation and what are the biggest factors that impact social isolation or lack of social
really looking forward to seeing what you find out.
Or depression for older adults. And in that way, if we understand who is most affected, who is most likely to be socially isolated, we can be more effective targeting interventions towards those
care
groups.
Residences are helping their seniors deal with their anxiety and their stress. Is there groups?
The Seniors Advocate has reported there's been quite an increase in the use of antipsychotics. That's not the most useful way to deal with things, but I think it's reality. There is some literature coming out about that as well. Other places about the increased use of benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, and also restraints in long-term care. If you think about the difficulty during COVID, especially during outbreaks of being able to keep people separate from each other when there's significant dementia and or people don't understand what's going on, you see what they've, why, I'm not justifying it, but why they've turned that way, especially in the face of chronic short staffing. They have been doing things like Zoom calls and phone calls to family, which they normally haven't been doing, family out of town, family in town on a scheduled basis. But of course, many residents are unable to participate in that because of hearing, vision, and or cognitive impairment. They can't focus in, but it's been helpful for some people. The other thing, of course, is some people have been allowed in. They've had, I think, an effort in some facilities more than others, but nevertheless some facilities to increase the activities, knowing that they are the only activity, the staff are the only contact many of these people have. So there's been efforts made that way, but limited when you think about the scope of the issue, very, very limited realistic replacements for people coming in to visit, family visitors, friends, community members, that kind of stuff gone, right? So it's been challenging.
Yes, it definitely sounds like it. It kind of makes me think about I don't know a lot about long-term care because I've never worked in one, but I think that it would be timely that they would create sort of social meditation circles or practices to help people while they're being isolated. Denise, do you have any input on any ideas on what people could do if they're in a long-term care, like the staff members, or something to help them get through the situation until we're all fully, vaccinated and out into the community again?
That's a really important question, Vicki. What I would draw attention to, I guess, is the research literature, which talks about kind of two different types of interventions that are really helpful in reducing social isolation. And the first are the targeted group projects, group interventions, group programs that involve like friendship clubs, dining groups, caregiver support groups, things like that. So they bring people together and try to bring them together in an active way so that they're participating as fully as possible is one way of reducing the effects of social isolation on individuals. Another strategy is targeting people one-on-one. So you kind of think about gatekeepers and champions who know persons who are vulnerable in the community somewhere or in the residential care setting, and they seek to bring those individuals to make contact with individuals.
What I would like to suggest is that
solutions to them, like be a friend, be someone that listens to them, be someone that connects them to other services and programs, that kind of championing role, if you like.
And they can read our report, and there's also a letter writing campaign to MLAs and a petition to the federal government that they can utilize if they want to make a difference. I think the public's become very aware of the limitations in long-term care and don't want to see things go back or to remain the way they are, and this is one step that they can take.
Yeah, that's super. Yeah, we've done that on behalf of Seniors Serving Seniors. We've done that. And, the whole healthy aging, I'm really involved with that, with our agency about healthy aging and having people stay in their own homes. And it just seems like it's such a great goal, and it's really where we'd like to go. But then there are also the reality that sometimes we do need assisted living, or we do need to go to long-term care, or, sometimes our mental health fails. So how to navigate that and how to keep up on it. I mean, I think it's a community approach. And Denise, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Adam and Penny have said, in particular thinking about the staff mix in facilities or in community programming. The idea, if we think about whole person care, looking after an individual's needs in the most holistic sense possible, their social, emotional, physical, spiritual needs, we have to think about team members who are more diverse. And we don't resource community programs, we don't resource long-term care sufficiently. But if you were to think about who do you want around you to support quality of life, it would be the RNs, LPNs, and healthcare aides. It would also be social workers, activity coordinators,
Yeah,
recreation
absolutely.
specialists,
That's
arts
excellent.
arts therapists.
I really agree
think
with
that
that.
that's
And
important
what's
for us to
interesting to
think
me is
about the
that
broader range
there's a lot of there are
team
many
members
discrepancies
who
between
can
long-term
address
care
issues
facilities
of
in
quality
terms
of
of
life and whole
their
person care
staffing. For
more
example, not all
effectively
long-term care
and fully.
facilities, and I'm talking subsidized long-term care, have social workers. Some do, some don't. Some have more robust activity programs than others. For example, long-term care facilities that receive funding from Veterans Affairs tend to have more robust activity programs. So there are quite a few discrepancies, and I wonder if there are provincial or federal standards being looked at for what kinds of, when they're looking at staffing ratios in long-term care, not just looking at how many LPNs and care aides and RNs have to be on, but should it be mandated that long-term care facilities have a social worker, for example?
Yeah, that's excellent. I think the key word is holistic. Thank you for that. I want to thank Adam, Penny, and Denise so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing some of their work and passions. If you would like to learn more about the fabulous work of everyone, the websites and additional information will be in the podcast description. There you can also find more about Senior Serving Seniors and the services that we provide free of charge, voluntary based to all seniors in the Greater Victoria area. That's all from us this episode. Until the next one, take care.